What happens when you tell your husband his children are not your problem and try to push them out of your life, only for him to hand you separation papers instead? How far can you go blaming everyone else before the truth catches up with you? The day those legal papers landed on my kitchen table, I still thought I was the victim. The morning sunlight streamed through our kitchen windows as I sat at the breakfast table, watching Gareth pack Ellis and Mila's lunchboxes with the methodical precision that had once charmed me. Now it just irritated me. Everything about this domestic routine felt suffocating, like a noose tightening around my neck day by day. "We need to talk," I announced, setting down my coffee mug with enough force to make Gareth look up from spreading peanut butter on whole wheat bread. "Can it wait until tonight? The kids need to get to school, and I have that presentation at 9. His voice carried that familiar note of exhaustion that had become his default tone whenever I opened my mouth lately. "No, it can't wait. This affects them too." I gestured toward 13-year-old Ellis, who was hunched over his cereal bowl, and 9-year-old Mila, who was carefully arranging her backpack supplies with the same obsessive attention to detail as her father. Ellis glanced up nervously. The kid had developed this habit of watching me like I might explode at any moment, which honestly wasn't entirely inaccurate these days. "What's this about, Leo?" Gareth's hand stilled on the sandwich he was making. "I've been thinking about summer plans. Your mother mentioned wanting the kids to spend more time with her, right? Well, maybe they should go stay with Vivienne for the whole summer instead of just weekends." The kitchen went dead silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Even Mila stopped organizing her pencils. "Stay with Grandma Viv for the whole summer?" Mila's voice was small and confused. "But what about our family vacation and summer camp?" I forced a smile that felt like plastic stretching across my face. "Sweetie, sometimes families need a little break from each other. It doesn't mean anything bad." "Yes, it does." Ellis pushed back from the table, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "You want us gone." "Ellis, that's not—" Gareth started, but I cut him off. "Look, I'm trying to be practical here. You're both at difficult ages. There's constant tension in this house, and frankly, I think some space would be good for everyone." The words tumbled out faster than I'd intended, but once they started, I couldn't stop them. "Your grandmother has that big house, she's retired, and she's always complaining that she doesn't see you enough." "Leo," Gareth's voice carried a warning I chose to ignore. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking but nobody wants to say. Blended families are hard, Gareth. The statistics prove it. Most of them fail because people try to force relationships that just aren't natural." Mila's eyes filled with tears. "Are you and Daddy getting divorced?" "Nobody's getting divorced," Gareth said quickly, shooting me a look that could have melted steel. "Leo's just having a rough morning." "I'm having a rough year," I snapped back, "and I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not. These kids barely tolerate me, I can't do anything right in their eyes, and you always take their side." "That's not true," Ellis said quietly, but his voice shook. "Isn't it? When was the last time you actually wanted to spend time with me? When was the last time either of you acted like I was part of this family instead of some intruder you're stuck with?" The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, could see the shock and hurt written across their faces, but I couldn't take the words back. Part of me didn't want to. Gareth stood up slowly, his movements careful and controlled. "Kids, go get ready for school. Take your time." Ellis and Mila fled the kitchen like the room was on fire, leaving Gareth and me alone with the wreckage of what I'd just said. "What the hell was that?" His voice was quiet, but there was something dangerous underneath it. "That was honesty, something this family could use more of." "Honesty? You just told my children they're not wanted in their own home." "I said they might benefit from spending time with their grandmother. There's a difference." "No, Leo, there isn't. Not to them." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized as his way of trying to keep his temper in check. "These kids lost their mother 3 years ago. This house, this family, it's all they have left of stability." "And what about what I need? What about my stability? I didn't sign up to be a full-time stepmother to 2 kids who resent my existence. You signed up when you married me. They're part of the package, Leo. They always have been. I could hear movement upstairs, the kids getting ready for school, probably whispering about what they'd just witnessed. The thought made my chest tight with something that might have been guilt if I'd let myself feel it. Maybe that was a mistake, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Gareth went very still. What did you say? I said maybe marrying someone with kids was a mistake, for both of us. You need someone who can love them like their real mother did, and I need a partner who puts our marriage first sometimes. Their real mother is dead, Leo. She's been dead for 3 years, and I'm not putting our marriage first at the expense of my children's emotional well-being. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. It's always about them. When do I get to matter? You matter, but you're an adult, and they're children who've already lost more than any kid should have to lose. I could hear Ellis's voice from upstairs, probably trying to comfort Mila. The sound made something twist in my stomach, but I pushed it down. I can't keep living like this, Gareth. Something has to change. You're right. Something does. He picked up his car keys from the counter, his movements sharp and decisive. I'll drop them at school and we'll finish this conversation tonight. Where are you going after that? To work, where I'll spend the day trying to figure out how to explain to my children that their stepmother thinks they're a burden. The accusation hit like a slap. I never said they were a burden. You didn't have to. They heard you loud and clear. He paused at the kitchen doorway. And so did I. After they left, the house felt hollow and too quiet. I tried to convince myself I'd done the right thing, that someone needed to address the elephant in the room. But Ellis's stricken face kept flashing through my mind, and Mila's tears seemed to echo in the empty kitchen. I grabbed my phone and texted my sister Tessa. Had it out with Gareth this morning about the kids. I think I need to stay strong on this one. Her response came back within minutes. Good for you. You can't sacrifice your mental health for kids who aren't even yours. Stand your ground. Reading her words made me feel marginally better, more justified in my position. Tessa understood what it was like to put yourself first. She'd never let a man's baggage drag her down. But as I sat alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the detritus of the morning routine, half-empty cereal bowls, forgotten homework sheets, a small pink hair tie that belonged to Mila, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. My phone buzzed with a text from Gareth. Mom's picking up the kids after school today. They'll stay there tonight. I stared at the message, waiting to feel relieved. Instead, I just felt empty. The next morning at work, I found myself gravitating toward Jasper Coyle's desk more than usual. The open-plan office buzzed with the typical Monday morning energy, but I felt disconnected from it all, like I was watching everyone through glass. Rough weekend? Jasper looked up from his computer screen, his green eyes crinkling with concern. At 35, he had the kind of easy charm that made conversation feel effortless, which was exactly what I needed. You could say that. I perched on the edge of his desk, ignoring the way Sandra from accounting glanced over with barely concealed interest. Family drama. The stepkids again. I'd been venting to Jasper about Ellis and Mila for months now. He was one of the few people who seemed to understand how impossible my situation was, how unfair it was for me to be expected to instantly love children who clearly didn't want me around. I finally told Gareth they should spend the summer with his mother. You should have seen the way they reacted, like I'd suggested selling them to strangers. Jasper leaned back in his chair, his attention fully focused on me. Kids are resilient. They'll adapt. That's what I keep trying to tell myself, but Gareth acted like I'd committed some unforgivable sin. He's so protective of them that he can't see how toxic the whole situation has become. Sounds like he's more invested in being their friend than being your husband. The validation felt like cool water on a burn. Exactly. I feel like I'm competing with ghosts, their dead mother, their perfect little family unit that I'll never be part of. Hey, Leo. Marcus from IT stopped by Jasper's desk, his timing impeccable as always. You got a minute? I need to ask you about the Henderson account. I slid off Jasper's desk reluctantly. Sure. What's up? As Marcus launched into questions about client files, I caught Jasper watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. There was something in his gaze that made my skin feel warm, something that had been building between us for weeks now. Later, when the office had settled into its afternoon rhythm, Jasper appeared at my desk with 2 cups of coffee. Peace offering, he said, setting one down beside my keyboard. You look like you needed this. Thanks. I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes. Like maybe I'm the problem and everyone else is perfectly reasonable. You're not crazy. You're in an impossible situation with a husband who won't prioritize your needs. He pulled up a chair, sitting close enough that I could smell his cologne. Have you thought about what you'd do if things don't improve? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with implications neither of us was quite ready to voice. Sometimes, I admitted. But it's complicated. The house, our finances, everything's tangled up together. Life's too short to be miserable, Leo. You deserve better than walking on eggshells in your own home. His hand brushed against mine as he reached for his coffee, and the contact sent a little shock through my system. This was dangerous territory, but it felt so good to have someone on my side, someone who saw things from my perspective. I should get back to work, I said, but I didn't move away from him. We should grab lunch sometime this week, really talk, away from all this. He gestured around the office with its constant interruptions and watchful eyes. I'd like that. After he walked away, I sat staring at my computer screen without really seeing it. My phone buzzed with a text from Gareth. Kids are staying at Mum's again tonight. They need some time to process what happened yesterday. Instead of the relief I expected to feel, his message just made me angry. He was punishing me, using his children as weapons to make me feel guilty for speaking my truth. I typed back, "Fine, maybe I'll work late tonight anyway." But even as I sent the message, I was already thinking about Jasper's lunch invitation, about the way he looked at me like I was worth listening to, worth understanding. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Gareth's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. "We need to talk about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "I mean, the kids are scared to come home, Leo. Mila asked my mother if she did something wrong to make you not want her around." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I forced myself to stay calm. I never said I didn't want her around. You said they should spend the summer somewhere else. You said blended families don't work. What exactly did you think a 9-year-old would take from that? I think you're being dramatic. Kids are more resilient than you give them credit for. Jesus, Leo, do you hear yourself? These are my children we're talking about. They're not just some abstract concept you can philosophize about. I could hear voices in the background, his co-workers, probably wondering why he was having a personal call in the middle of the day. The thought embarrassed me. Look, I can't talk about this right now. I'm at work. So am I, but somehow I'm managing to prioritize my family. The accusation stung because it hit too close to home. That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you asked how Ellis did on his history test? Or remembered that Mila has her piano recital next week? I opened my mouth to respond, but realized I didn't have an answer. The details of their lives felt like background noise to me, things I was supposed to care about but couldn't quite manage to focus on. "I'll try harder," I said finally. "Will you? Because right now it feels like you've already checked out of this family." After he hung up, I sat in my cubicle feeling raw and exposed. Sandra was definitely watching me now, probably picking up on the tension in my voice. The last thing I needed was office gossip about my personal life. But when Jasper walked by an hour later and left a sticky note on my desk that read, "Thinking of you," I felt something inside me ease. At least someone understood what I was going through. I crumpled up the note and threw it away, but not before reading it 3 more times. Sunday brunch at Miller's Diner, had been a family tradition since Gareth and I got married. The kids loved their chocolate chip pancakes. Vivienne enjoyed holding court in the big corner booth, and I used to find comfort in the routine of it all. But as we walked through the familiar glass doors that morning, I felt like I was entering enemy territory. The hostess, a college-aged girl with purple streaks in her hair, greeted us with the kind of forced cheerfulness that made me want to turn around and leave. "The usual table?" she asked, already grabbing menus. "Please," Gareth replied, his hand resting protectively on Mila's shoulder. I noticed the gesture and felt a familiar spike of irritation. Everything he did lately seemed designed to emphasize his role as the devoted father, the responsible parent who had to compensate for his selfish wife. Vivienne was already seated when we arrived, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. At 64, Gareth's mother maintained the kind of effortless elegance that made me feel perpetually underdressed and inadequate. "There are my babies," she said, opening her arms for Ellis and Mila, who slid into the booth beside her with obvious relief. The seating arrangement left me across from Vivienne, with Gareth beside me, a configuration that felt more like a tribunal than a family breakfast. "How was your week, Leo?" Vivienne's tone was polite but cool, the way you might ask about the weather from someone you barely tolerate. "Busy. Work's been demanding." I opened my menu even though I always ordered the same thing. Eggs Benedict, no hollandaise, fruit instead of hash browns. "Mom, guess what?" Mila bounced in her seat with excitement. "I got picked for the advanced reading group, and Mrs. Patterson says I might be able to skip ahead in math next year." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. You've been working so hard." Vivienne's face lit up with genuine pride and affection. I knew I should say something encouraging, should participate in celebrating Mila's achievement. But the words felt stuck in my throat, artificial and forced. "That's great, Mila," I managed finally, but even to my own ears, it sounded perfunctory. Ellis glanced at me, then away quickly. "I made varsity soccer. Coach says I'll probably start as midfielder." 8th grade and already varsity. "That's incredible, Ellis." Vivienne reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "It's actually pretty common for kids his age to make varsity in smaller schools," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "The competition isn't as intense as it would be in a bigger district." The table went quiet. Ellis's face flushed red, and I realized how my comment had sounded, like I was diminishing his accomplishment, minimizing something he was proud of. "What Leo means," Gareth said carefully, "is that you must be really talented to catch the coach's attention." But the damage was done. Ellis stared down at his hands, and Mila looked confused by the sudden tension. "Actually, that's not what I meant," I said, feeling cornered and defensive. "I was just pointing out that it's not as unusual as everyone's making it sound." "Leo," Gareth's voice carried a warning. "What? I'm not allowed to provide context. Everyone acts like these kids walk on water, but maybe a little realistic perspective would be healthy." Vivienne set down her coffee cup with deliberate precision. "Realistic perspective about what, exactly?" "About the fact that constant praise for ordinary achievements doesn't prepare children for real-world expectations. Ellis making a small-town soccer team isn't the same as earning a college scholarship." "He's 13 years old." Vivienne's voice was dangerously quiet. "Which is exactly why he should learn, now that not everything he does deserves a parade." The silence that followed was deafening. Other diners were starting to notice our table, drawn by the tension that seemed to radiate from our corner booth. "Why don't you like us?" Mila's voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the restaurant noise like a blade. "Sweetheart, that's not—" Gareth started. "No, let her answer," Vivienne interrupted. "I'd like to hear this too." All eyes turned to me, and I felt trapped, cornered by their expectations and my own inability to give them what they wanted. The truth was, I didn't dislike Ellis and Mila. I just couldn't connect with them, couldn't find the maternal feelings that everyone assumed would develop naturally. It's not about liking or not liking, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's about realistic expectations. You all act like I should instantly love children who aren't mine, who have no interest in building a relationship with me. They're 9 and 13, Vivian said. What exactly do you expect from them? I expect them to meet me halfway. I expect their father to support me instead of undermining me at every turn. I expect to matter in my own marriage. You do matter, Gareth said, but his voice lacked conviction. Do I? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like I'm just the woman who pays half the mortgage and does the grocery shopping. God forbid I have an opinion about anything related to your precious children. That's enough. Vivian stood up abruptly. Mila, Ellis, we're leaving. Mom, please. Gareth reached for her arm, but she pulled away. I won't sit here and listen to this woman tear down 2 children who have already been through more loss than most adults experience in a lifetime. She gathered her purse and coat with sharp, efficient movements. Come on, kids. Let's go get ice cream and talk about all the wonderful things you've accomplished this week. Ellis and Mila slid out of the booth, both of them avoiding eye contact with me. As they walked away, I heard Mila ask her grandmother in a small voice, "Did I do something wrong?" Vivian's response was loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. "No, sweetheart. Some people just can't appreciate how special you are." The remaining diners were openly staring now, their conversations muted as they watched our family drama unfold. I felt heat creep up my neck, embarrassment and anger warring in my chest. "Great," I said to Gareth. "Now your mother's turned the kids against me even more." "Leo, what the hell is wrong with you?" His voice was quiet but intense. "Those are my children you just humiliated in public." I didn't humiliate anyone. I just refused to participate in the constant ego-stroking that passes for parenting in this family. Ego-stroking. Ellis worked his ass off to make that team, and Mila has been struggling with math all year. They were sharing good news with people they thought cared about them. I do care, but caring doesn't mean pretending everything they do is extraordinary. Gareth signaled for the check, his movements sharp with barely controlled anger. "We're going home. Now." As we waited for the server, I noticed her whispering to another waitress behind the counter. Both of them kept glancing in our direction, and I caught fragments of their conversation. "Heard they're having problems. Poor kids. That woman from his office." The last comment made my blood run cold. "What did she just say?" "What?" Gareth was counting bills, not paying attention to the staff gossip. "Nothing, never mind." But as we left the restaurant, I couldn't shake the feeling that our private business was becoming very public, and not in ways that would reflect well on me. That evening, the house felt like a museum after closing time. Too quiet, too sterile, full of spaces where people should be but weren't. Ellis and Mila were still at Vivienne's, and Gareth had spent most of the afternoon in his home office with the door closed. I found him in the kitchen around 7, microwaving leftover Chinese takeout. He looked exhausted, older than his 38 years. "The kids called," he said without looking at me. "They want to stay at Mum's again tonight." "Fine by me. Maybe we can actually have a conversation without an audience for once." He turned around slowly, and I was struck by the expression on his face, something between disappointment and resignation that made my stomach clench. "Is that really what you think they are? An audience?" "I think they're children who've been through trauma, and sometimes that trauma manifests as manipulation. They know exactly which buttons to push to get you to choose them over me." "Choose them over you?" Gareth set down his food, his appetite apparently gone. "Leo, they're not my competitors, they're my kids. And I'm your wife, or at least I used to be, before everything became about managing their feelings and protecting them from the reality that their father remarried. The reality is that their father married someone who can't stand them." The accusation hung in the air between us, brutal in its simplicity. I wanted to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. "That's not true," I said finally, but we both heard how hollow it sounded. isn't it? When was the last time you said something kind to either of them? When was the last time you showed interest in their lives that wasn't criticism disguised as realistic perspective? I opened my mouth to respond, then closed it again. The truth was, I couldn't remember. Every interaction with Ellis and Myla felt like walking through a minefield, and it was easier to avoid them altogether than risk saying the wrong thing. I'm trying, Gareth, but it's hard when I feel like I'm being judged for every word, every gesture. You're being judged because your words and gestures hurt people I love. And what about me? What about what I need? What do you need, Leo? Tell me. What would make this work for you? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on what wasn't working that I hadn't really considered what would. I need to feel like I matter. I need to feel like we're a team instead of you and the kids versus me. I need some acknowledgement that this is hard for me too. Okay, I can work with that, but I need something from you too. What? I need you to try, really try, not just go through the motions, but actually engage with Ellis and Mila like they're human beings worthy of your attention. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's work. I should take this. He answered with his professional voice. Gareth Marrow. I watched his expression change as he listened, saw the confusion give way to something harder. I see. No, I appreciate you letting me know. We'll discuss it Monday. He hung up and stared at the phone for a long moment. What was that about? That was my manager. Apparently, there are rumors going around the office about my personal life. Something about my wife having problems with my kids and spending a lot of time with a coworker named Jasper. My blood turned to ice. That's ridiculous. Who would say something like that? I don't know, Leo. You tell me. I have no idea where that would come from. Office gossip is always blown out of proportion. So you're not spending time with this Jasper person? The question was asked casually, but I could hear the trap in it. If I denied it completely, he might check. If I admitted to it, I'd have to explain why I hadn't mentioned it before. Jasper's a coworker. We talk sometimes. It's not unusual to be friendly with people you work with. Friendly how? What is this? An interrogation? I'm allowed to have conversations with my colleagues. Of course you are. But when those conversations become office gossip that reflects badly on our family, I think I have a right to know what's being said. I felt cornered, defensive. Nothing inappropriate is being said. If people want to create drama where none exists, that's their problem. Is it? Because right now, it feels like our problem. You're being paranoid. Am I? Because lately, it feels like you're checked out of this marriage, Leo. You don't want to spend time with my kids. You're hostile during family events. And now there are rumors about you and some guy from work. Those things aren't connected. Aren't they? The conversation was spiraling in a direction I didn't like, touching on truths I wasn't ready to examine. My relationship with Jasper was innocent, mostly innocent, but I couldn't deny that it filled a need Gareth wasn't meeting. I think you're looking for problems where none exist because you can't handle the fact that your perfect little family unit isn't working. My perfect little family unit? Leo, we're supposed to be building something together, all of us, but you've never been willing to be part of that. Because I wasn't consulted about what that would look like. You had your life all figured out, and I was just supposed to slot myself into whatever space was left over. That's not how it happened, and you know it. Don't I? You made it clear from day one that the kids came first, that their needs trumped everything else. What was I supposed to do with that? You were supposed to understand that loving me meant accepting all of me, including my responsibilities as a father. And what about your responsibilities as a husband? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it, and his jaw tightened. The kids want to know if they can stay at Mom's through the weekend. They're asking if you're still angry at them. The words hit me like a physical blow. I was never angry at them. Then why are they afraid to come home? I didn't have an answer for that, or rather, I had answers, but none of them reflected well on me. Maybe some space would be good for everyone, I said finally. Maybe it would. Gareth picked up his keys from the counter. I'm going to Mum's. We'll figure out next steps tomorrow. What kind of next steps? The kind that protect my children from feeling unwanted in their own home. After he left, I sat alone in the kitchen, replaying the conversation and trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. How did things go with Gareth? I typed back, not great, he's being unreasonable about the kids, and now he's paranoid about my friendships at work. Her response came quickly. Sounds like he's feeling threatened. Men get weird when they realize they might lose control of the situation. Reading her words made me feel slightly better, more justified in my position. But I couldn't shake the image of Mila asking why I didn't like them, or the hurt in Ellis's eyes when I'd dismissed his soccer achievement. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Jasper's name flashed on the screen. Hey, I answered, surprised to hear from him on a Sunday evening. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. I just wanted to check on you after our conversation Friday. You seemed really stressed. It's been a rough weekend. Family stuff. Want to talk about it? Sometimes an outside perspective helps. I glanced around the empty house, feeling the weight of the silence pressing down on me. Actually, yes, I think I'd like that. As I settled into the conversation with Jasper, telling him about the disastrous brunch and Gareth's accusations, I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. Here was someone who listened without judgment, who understood that relationships were complicated and that sometimes good people found themselves in impossible situations. By the time we hung up an hour later, I felt more like myself again. But as I headed upstairs to bed, I couldn't ignore the nagging voice in the back of my mind that whispered I was walking down a path I might not be able to find my way back from. Monday morning arrived with the kind of grey drizzle that matched my mood perfectly. Gareth had left early for work without saying goodbye, and the house felt hollow in his absence. I'd barely slept, replaying our conversation and the growing list of problems that seemed to multiply every time I tried to address them. At the office, I threw myself into work with unusual intensity, hoping to lose myself in spreadsheets and client calls. But concentration proved elusive when every conversation seemed to stop abruptly as I approached, and I caught Sandra from accounting, watching me with undisguised curiosity. Morning, Leo. Jasper appeared at my desk with coffee, as had become his habit. You look like you could use this. Thanks. I feel like I'm living in a fishbowl lately. He glanced around the office, noting the subtle attention we were attracting. Want to grab lunch somewhere quiet? You look like you need to decompress. I probably shouldn't. Things are complicated enough at home without adding fuel to the rumor mill. Since when do we let office gossips dictate our friendships? He was right, and I was tired of tiptoeing around other people's perceptions. Okay, but somewhere away from here. We ended up at a small cafe across town, the kind of place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. It felt good to be somewhere no one knew us, where I could speak freely without worrying about who might be listening. So what's really going on? Jasper asked after we'd ordered. I found myself telling him everything. The disastrous brunch, Gareth's accusations, the way Ellis and Mila seemed to be afraid of me now. Jasper listened without interruption, his attention focused entirely on me, in a way that felt both comforting and intoxicating. It sounds like you're being scapegoated, he said finally. Everyone's making you the villain because you're the only one willing to acknowledge that the situation isn't working. That's exactly how it feels, like I'm expected to sacrifice my own happiness to maintain some fantasy of the perfect blended family. Have you considered that maybe this marriage isn't salvageable? That you might be better off cutting your losses? The question hung in the air between us, dangerous and tempting. I'd been thinking the same thing but hadn't dared voice it. It's complicated. The house, our finances, everything's intertwined. Those are just logistics. The real question is whether you're happy, whether this is the life you want. His hand covered mine across the table, warm and reassuring. You deserve better than walking on eggshells in your own home. The contact sent electricity through my system, and I didn't pull away. This was crossing a line, but it felt so good to have someone on my side, someone who saw my worth. I should get back, I said reluctantly. Of course, but Leo, don't let them convince you that wanting happiness makes you selfish. The drive back to the office gave me time to think about what Jasper had said. Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd been so focused on trying to make an impossible situation work that I'd lost sight of what I actually wanted. That evening, I decided to take control of the narrative. If people were going to talk about my personal life anyway, they might as well hear my side of the story. I crafted a careful post on social media. Struggling with the challenges of blended families today. It's hard when you feel like you're expected to instantly love children who aren't yours, especially when their father won't support the relationship. Anyone else dealing with step-parent burnout? The responses came quickly. Some were supportive, others critical, but all of them felt like validation that I wasn't alone in this struggle. Tessa commented immediately, "Stay strong, sis. You can't pour from an empty cup. Your mental health matters too." But then Vivian's sister Margaret replied, "Maybe the problem isn't the children." The comment stung, but it also fired up my defensive instincts. I responded, "Easy to judge when you're not living the reality. Some situations are more complicated than they appear from the outside." Within an hour, the post had generated dozens of comments, with friends and family members taking sides. I watched the digital battle unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and unease. My phone rang around 9, Gareth's name on the screen. "What the hell are you doing?" His voice was tight with anger. "What are you talking about?" "Your Facebook post. My mother's friends are calling her, asking if our marriage is in trouble. Ellis saw it and asked if you hate him." My stomach dropped. "I didn't mention Ellis specifically." "You didn't have to. Everyone knows you're talking about my kids." "Maybe that's because everyone knows the situation is unsustainable." "The situation is unsustainable because you're making it that way. You're airing our private business on social media like some teenager having a meltdown." "I'm trying to get support from people who understand what I'm going through. By humiliating my children publicly, by making them feel like they're unwanted burdens." I could hear voices in the background, Ellis and Mila, probably wondering why their father was arguing on the phone again. "I never said they were unwanted." "You implied it, and now it's out there for everyone to see, including them. Maybe it's time everyone stopped pretending this is working when it clearly isn't." The silence that followed was different from our usual argument pauses. This felt final, like something breaking that couldn't be repaired. "You're right," Gareth said finally. "It isn't working, and I can't keep subjecting my children to someone who sees them as obstacles to overcome rather than people to love." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm calling my lawyer tomorrow." "I can't do this anymore, Leo. I won't do this to Ellis and Mila anymore." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in shock. He was bluffing, had to be. Gareth wasn't the type to make impulsive decisions, especially not ones that would upend his carefully ordered life. But as I sat alone in our empty house, scrolling through the comments on my post and watching our private pain become public entertainment, I began to wonder if I'd finally pushed him past his breaking point. My phone buzzed with a text from Jasper. "Saw your post. Want to talk?" For the first time all day, I felt like someone actually cared about what I was going through. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who asked me to sign for it with the kind of professional courtesy that somehow made the moment feel more ominous. I recognized the law firm's letterhead immediately. Henderson, Walsh and Associates, the same firm that had handled our house purchase 3 years ago. My hand shook as I opened it, even though I'd been expecting this since Gareth's phone call. The legal language was dense and formal, but the meaning was crystal clear. Petition for legal separation, temporary custody order, and asset protection. I was still staring at the papers when my phone rang. Tessa's name flashed on the screen. Leo, I just saw Gareth's car at Henderson's office. Please tell me this isn't what I think it is. He served me with separation papers, I said, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. Oh, honey, I'm coming over. You don't have to. I'm already in the car. 20 minutes later, Tessa sat across from me at the kitchen table, reading through the legal documents with the focused intensity she usually reserved for her work as a paralegal. This is comprehensive, she said finally. He's asking for primary custody of the kids, exclusive use of the house until the separation is finalized, and he's documented every major argument you've had over the past 6 months. How could he document our arguments? Audio recordings, apparently. Look at Exhibit C. I flipped to the reference page and felt the blood drain from my face. There it was, in black and white, a transcript of our conversation from last week, including my exact words about his children being not my problem. He recorded me, in our own home. It looks like he's been building a case for a while. This isn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, Leo. This is strategic. The betrayal felt like a physical wound. While I'd been struggling with our relationship, trying to find ways to make it work, Gareth had been collecting evidence against me. What do? You get a lawyer, a good one. And you need to be very careful about what you say and do from now on, because he's clearly still gathering ammunition. That afternoon, I sat in the office of Patricia Williams, the divorce attorney Tessa had recommended. Patricia was in her 50s, with silver hair and the kind of sharp intelligence that made me feel both protected and exposed. I've reviewed the documents your husband filed, she said, spreading the papers across her mahogany desk. I have to tell you, Mrs. Marrow, this is going to be challenging. Challenging how? He's painted a very specific picture of you as someone who is hostile toward his children and emotionally unstable. The social media posts, the recorded conversations, witness statements from family members, it all supports his narrative. Witness statements, from who? His mother, primarily, but also several people who were present at various family gatherings where conflicts occurred. I thought about the disastrous brunch, the arguments Ellis and Mila had overheard, the growing list of moments when I'd let my frustration show. So, what are my options? We can contest the custody arrangement, argue for joint custody or supervised visitation. We can challenge some of the evidence as being taken out of context, but honestly, your best bet might be to focus on the financial aspects and try to negotiate a settlement that protects your interests. What about the children? I don't want them to think I'm abandoning them. Patricia's gaze was kind but ruthless. The kids were probably relieved to breathe without the conflict, and sometimes stepping back is mercy. That word, mercy, made me nauseous. I called Jasper for comfort, and he told me clean breaks hurt less in the long run, that this family situation was never going to work. Then my mother called, disappointed, insisting I owed patience to grieving children. The next morning, Gareth's lawyer sent mediation terms, supervised visits, counseling, a slow path back. I almost agreed, until I found Gareth's notebook, dated arguments and tiny hopes. At Vivienne's, Mila asked, "Is it because of us?" I left in tears, then signed anyway.